Chapter 3 The Institute. Love, hope, fear, faith. These make humanity. These are a sign and note and character. Robert Browning. Paracelsus. In the dream, Tessa lay once again tied to the narrow brass bed in the dark house. The sisters leaned over her, clacking pairs of long knitting needles and laughing in shrill, high-pitched voices. As Tessa watched, their features changed, their eyes sinking into their heads, their hair falling out, and stitches appearing across their lips, sewing them shut. Tessa shrieked voicelessly, but they did not seem to hear. The sisters vanished entirely then, and Aunt Harriet was standing over Tessa, her face flushed with fever, as it had been during the terrible illness that had killed her. She looked at Tessa with great sadness. "I tried," she said. "I tried to love you, but it isn't easy to love a child that isn't human in the least." "Not human?" said an unfamiliar voice. "Well, if she isn't human, Enoch, what is she?" The voice sharpened in impatience. "What do you mean you don't know? Everyone's something. This girl can't be nothing at all." Tessa woke with a cry, her eyes flying open, and found herself staring at shadows. Darkness clustered about her thickly. She could barely hear the murmur of voices through her panic, and struggled into a sitting position, kicking away blankets and pillows. Dimly she recognized that the blanket was thick and heavy, not the thin, braided one that belonged to the dark house. She was in a bed, just as she had dreamed, in a great stone room, and there was hardly any light. She heard the rasp of her own breath as she turned, and a scream forced its way out of her throat. The face from her nightmare hovered in the darkness before her, a great white moon of a face, its head shaved bald, smooth as marble. Where the eyes should have been, there were only indentations in the flesh, not as if the eyes had been ripped out, but as if they had never grown there at all. The lips were banded with black stitches, the face scrawled with black marks like the ones on Will's skin, though these looked as if they had been cut there with knives. She screamed again and scrabbled backwards. Half falling off the bed, she hit the cold stone floor and the fabric of the white nightdress she was wearing. Someone must have put it on her while she was unconscious, ripped at the hem, as she scrambled to her feet. "Miss Gray!" Someone was calling her name, but in her panic she only knew that the voice was unfamiliar. The speaker was not the monster who stood staring at her from the bedside, its scarred face impassive. It had not moved when she did, and though it showed no signs of pursuing her, she began to back away, carefully, feeling behind herself for a door. The room was so dim, she could see only that it was roughly oval, the walls and floors all of stone. The ceiling was high enough to be in black shadow, and there were long windows across the opposite wall, the sort of arched windows that might have belonged in a church. Very little light filtered through them. It looked as if the sky outside was dark. Theresa Gray. She found the door, the metal handle. Turning, she seized on it thankfully and pulled. Nothing happened. A sob rose up in her voice. "Miss Gray!" the voice said again, and suddenly the room was flooded with a light, a sharp, white, silver light that she recognized. "Miss Gray, I am sorry. It was not our intention to frighten you." The voice was a woman's, still unfamiliar, but youthful and concerned. "Miss Gray, please." Tessa turned slowly and put her back against the door. She could see clearly now. She was in a stone room whose central focus was a large four-poster bed, its velvet coverlet now rucked and hanging sideways where she had dragged it off the mattress. Tapestry curtains were pulled back, and there was an elegant tapestry rug on the otherwise bare floor. In fact, the room itself was fairly bare. There were no pictures or photographs hanging on the wall, no ornaments cluttering the surfaces of the dark wood furniture. 2 chairs stood facing each other near the bed, with a small tea table between them. A Chinese screen in one corner of the room hid what were probably a bathtub and washstand. Besides the bed stood a tall man whose robes were like a monk of a long, coarse, parchment-covered material. Red-brown runes circled the cuffs and hem. He carried a silver staff, its head carved in the shape of an angel and runes decorating its length. The hood of his robe was down, leaving bare his scarred white blinded face. Beside him stood a very small woman, almost child size, with thick brown hair knotted at the nape of her neck, and a neat, clever little face with bright, dark eyes like a bird's. She wasn't pretty exactly, but there was a calm, kindly look on her face that made the of panic in Tessa's stomach ease slightly, though she couldn't have said exactly why. In her hand she held a glowing white stone like the one Will had held at the dark house. Its light blazed out between her fingers, illuminating the room. "Miss Grey," she said, "I am Charlotte Branwell, head of the London Institute. And this beside me is Brother Enoch." "What kind of monster is he?" Tessa whispered. Brother Enoch said nothing. He was entirely expressionless. "I know there are monsters on this earth," said Tessa. "You cannot tell me otherwise. I have seen them." "I would not want to tell you otherwise," said Miss Branwell. "If the world were not full of monsters, there would be no need for shadow hunters." Shadow hunter. What the Dark Sister had called Will Herondale. Will. Will was with me," said Tessa, her voice shaking. "In the cellars. Will said—" She broke off and cringed inwardly. She should not have called Will by his Christian name. It implied an intimacy between them that did not exist. "Where is Mr. Herondale?" "He's here," Miss Branwell said calmly, "in the Institute." "Did he bring me here as well?" Tessa whispered. "Yes, but there's no need to look betrayed, Miss Grey. You had struck your head quite hard, and Will was concerned about you. Brother Enoch, though his looks may frighten you, is a skilled practitioner of medicine. He has determined that your head injury is slight, and that the main you are suffering from shock and nervous anxiety. In fact, it might be best if you sat down now. Hovering barefoot by the door like that will only give you a chill and do you little good." "You mean because I can't run?" Tessa said, licking her dry lips. "I can't get away." "If you demand to get away, as you put it, after we have talked, I will let you go," said Miss Branwell. "The Nephilim do not trap downworlders under duress. The Accords forbid it." "The Accords?" Miss Branwell hesitated, then turned to Brother Enoch and said something to him in a low voice. Much to Tessa's relief, he drew up the hood of his parchment-colored robes, hiding his face. A moment later, he was moving toward Tessa. She stepped back hurriedly, and he opened the door, pausing only for a moment on the threshold. In that moment, he spoke to Tessa, or perhaps spoke was not the word for it. She heard his voice inside her head rather than outside it. "You are Aide Delon, Teresa Grey, shape-changer, but not of a sort that is familiar to me. There is no demon marks on you." Shape-changer. He knew what she was. She stared at him, her heart pounding as he went through the door and closed it behind him. Tessa knew somehow that if she were going to run to the door and try the handle, she would once again find it locked, but the urge to escape her had left. Her knees felt as if they had turned to water. She sank down in one of the large chairs by the bed. "What is it?" Miss Branwell asked, moving to sit in the chair opposite Tessa's. Her dress hung so loosely on her small frame it was impossible to tell if she wore a corset beneath it, and the bones in her small wrists were like a child. "What did he say to you?"